The great hall of the alien empire was filled with light from tall crystal pillars. Banners of silver and black hung across the ceiling, and alien nobles gathered in circles, whispering and laughing. In the center sat the alien queen upon her throne. Her armor shone like a mirror, and her crown curved like the wings of a bird. She was feared and admired, for none in the empire had ever defeated her in combat. The queen lifted her hand, and the hall grew quiet. She looked at her generals and guards with a proud smile. Her voice was strong and carried across the entire chamber. "No warrior in this galaxy can stand against me," she declared. "Not beast, not soldier, not king. My blade has never tasted defeat." The nobles cheered, pounding their fists on the ground in approval. The queen's victories were known across worlds. She had dueled giants, wrestled machines, and fought warlords who had destroyed entire colonies. None of them had ever bested her. She leaned back on her throne, her eyes glittering with amusement. Then she spoke again, her tone light, almost playful. "If a human ever beats me, I will marry him." The words rang out, and then the chamber erupted with laughter. Some aliens nearly fell from their seats. To them, humans were small, fragile, and weak compared to the proud warriors of the empire. A human was more likely to trip than to win a duel with their queen. The idea of marriage between the strongest ruler of the empire and such a being was absurd. The queen herself laughed softly, waving her hand as if brushing away a foolish thought. "It will never happen," she added, her voice carrying arrogance. "But let the stars hear my words. I will keep them if the day comes." The nobles and generals kept laughing, repeating her words again and again, as if they were the finest joke of the season. Yet far away, among the crowd of attendants at the edge of the hall, stood a single human soldier. His name was Rin. He was not tall, nor did he wear shining armor. His uniform was plain, his face calm, his eyes steady. He had been assigned as part of the human delegation to the alien court, nothing more. But when the queen spoke, his heart stirred. He did not laugh. He did not smile. He listened carefully and felt something awaken inside him. To the others, it was a joke. To Rin, it was a promise. Rin had seen the way humans were treated among the empire. They were called weak. They were given small roles, tasks no warrior of status would accept. They were never respected as equals. But Rin believed in something different. He believed humans were not defined by strength of body, but by strength of will. As the nobles mocked, he stood quietly, his eyes fixed on the queen. She looked powerful, confident, untouchable. Yet her words had opened a path. Later, when the hall emptied and laughter faded, Rin walked alone through the corridors of the palace. The sound of alien banners shifting in the wind followed him. His mind was clear. He whispered to himself as he walked. She said it. She gave her word. And humans do not forget such words. That night, he trained alone in the quiet of the barracks. He did not boast to the other soldiers. He did not speak of what he planned. He moved with focus, practicing with his blade, his hands, his body. Each movement was slow and careful, as if every strike carried a meaning. He remembered the queen's words with each motion. Across the city, the queen enjoyed her victory feast, unaware that her passing laughter had already planted the seed of something greater. She did not know that among all the aliens who bowed to her, one human had chosen not to dismiss her challenge. The stars above the empire glittered like scattered fire across the black sky. To most, they were silent witnesses of power. To Rin, they were witnesses of a promise. The queen had laughed when she spoke. Rin did not laugh. He took it seriously. The following day, the palace was alive with noise. Messengers ran across marble halls, guards clashed their weapons during drills, and nobles prepared for the queen's upcoming trials. These trials were a tradition of the empire. Every year, warriors from across the stars came to test their skill against beasts, soldiers, and sometimes even the queen herself. Few ever reached the final stage. None had ever defeated her. In the middle of this grand preparation, a small announcement spread like a ripple across the court. A human soldier had stepped forward. His name was Rin. He had sent a request to the council, asking to join the trials. At first, no one believed it. A human? Competing in the trials of the Empire? The laughter that had filled the great hall the night before returned once again. He will not last a single round, sneered one noble. Perhaps he only wants a quick death, muttered another. A human dares to claim he can stand in the same arena as our queen, one general said with disgust. When the news reached the queen, she raised a brow. She sat in her private chamber, her armor resting on a stand beside her, while her advisors whispered around her. It is only a human, one said. Allowing him to join will make the trials look like a joke, another argued. But the queen leaned back in her seat and smiled faintly. A joke, she repeated. Perhaps. Or perhaps it will be amusing. Her eyes shone with curiosity. In all her years of battle, no human had ever dared to stand before her blade. She remembered her careless words from the hall the night before. If a human ever beats me, I will marry him. She had spoken it as laughter. But now, one had actually risen to answer it. Let him join, she commanded. Let the people see what becomes of a human who dreams too high. The order spread quickly. Rin was accepted into the trials. That evening, he walked through the crowded streets of the alien city. Many pointed at him, shaking their heads. Some laughed openly in his face. Others whispered as he passed. He did not react. His steps were steady, his gaze calm. When he reached the barracks where the other challengers trained, the laughter grew louder. Warriors twice his size sharpened their weapons, their muscles rippling like steel. Creatures from distant planets flexed claws and armored hides. And in the corner, standing alone with nothing more than a simple blade, was Rin. A tall alien challenger approached him, his voice mocking. Human, you think you can walk the same path as us? Rin looked up calmly. I am not here to compare myself to you. I am here to finish what I started. The alien burst into laughter and turned away, shaking his head. Yet the quiet tone of Rin's words unsettled some who overheard. He had not spoken like a fool. He had spoken like a man who meant every word. That night, while the other warriors roared with laughter, boasting of their strength, Rin trained alone. He did not train with wild movements. His strikes were precise, his footwork steady, his breathing controlled. Every motion carried purpose, as though he had imagined the queen herself standing before him. In her private balcony, the queen looked down at the training grounds. She saw him moving like a shadow in the dark, never resting, never speaking. Her lips curved slightly. For the first time in many years, she felt something different, not pride, not mockery, but curiosity. The next morning, the trials began. The arena was a colossal circle of stone, filled with roaring crowds from across the empire. Alien banners swayed high in the air. The queen sat on her throne at the highest seat, her eyes bright with interest. One by one, challengers stepped into the arena to prove themselves. Some fought beasts with claws like knives. Others dueled against elite guards. Blood stained the sand, and the cheers of the crowd shook the air. Finally, it was Rin's turn. The crowd's laughter was louder than the cheers had been for others. He entered the arena with no shining armor, no massive weapon. Only his plain blade and calm eyes. Why do you walk here, human? The announcer mocked from above. Do you seek glory or death? Rin lifted his gaze to the queen's throne. His voice carried across the arena, clear and steady. I walk here because she gave her word. And I will hold her to it. The laughter of the crowd fell into silence. Even the queen raised her chin slightly, her eyes locked on him. In that moment, the hall remembered her words from the night before. The first beast was released into the arena, its roar shaking the ground. The trial had begun. And Rin did not move back. He stepped forward. The crowd roared as the gates of the arena creaked open. Dust rose from the ground, and a deep growl echoed through the stone walls. From the shadows of the gate, a massive beast stepped forward. Its body was covered with thick scales, and its eyes glowed like hot embers. Its claws scraped the ground, leaving lines in the sand. The announcer lifted his voice so that all could hear. The first challenge is the Beast of Krath. Many warriors have fallen to its strength. Let us see how a human stands before it. Laughter followed, but the sound faded as the beast roared again. The creature's voice shook the air, and even strong alien soldiers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Rin stood in the middle of the arena with his simple blade. His grip was steady, his eyes calm. He did not look at the crowd, nor did he glance at the queen. His full attention was on the beast. The creature lunged, its claws striking down with the force of a hammer. Rin rolled aside, the sand scattering under him. He came back to his feet quickly, his movements smooth, not rushed. The crowd expected him to panic, to swing wildly, but he did not. He studied the beast, watching how it moved, how it turned its head, how its tail dragged behind it. The queen leaned forward slightly on her throne. She had seen many warriors face the beast. Most relied on brute force, meeting its claws head-on. Few lasted long. But this human was different. He did not fight with strength, he fought with patience. The beast charged again, its mouth wide, sharp teeth glistening. Rin waited until the last moment before stepping aside. He slashed once, not at its chest, not at its head, but at the soft joint near its leg. The blade cut through the weaker spot, and the beast stumbled with a loud snarl. Gasps rose from the audience. A single cut was not enough to bring the creature down, but it was the first time many had seen a challenger strike it so cleanly in the first round. Rin kept moving. He never stayed in the same place. Each time the beast lunged, he shifted, slashing at its weaker points. He was not trying to kill it with one blow. He was wearing it down. Minutes passed. The creature grew slower, its movements heavy. Blood dripped from its wounds, staining the sand. Rin's face was calm, though sweat marked his brow. His uniform was torn, but his eyes never lost focus. At last, the beast staggered and collapsed, too weak to rise. The crowd was silent for a moment, as if unable to believe what they had seen. Then voices rose in disbelief. A human struck down the beast. Impossible! No one has done this with only a blade so small. The queen rested her chin on her hand, her eyes studying the soldier below. She expected fear, or pride, or triumph. But Rin showed none of these. He simply lowered his blade and waited for the next challenge, as if this had only been another step. The announcer's voice broke through the noise of the arena. The human has passed the first trial. The crowd erupted again, some in anger, some in excitement. Many shouted that it was luck, that the beast had been weaker this time. Others argued that his movements had been too precise to be chance. For the first time in years, the trials carried true suspense. The gates opened again. This time, a squad of alien guards marched into the arena, each one larger and stronger than Rin. Their armor gleamed in the sunlight, their weapons sharp. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the Queen's chosen warriors, trained to fight without mercy. Rin stood ready. His grip on the blade tightened. The guards surrounded him in a circle, moving as one. The crowd cheered, certain the human's short success would now come to an end. The first guard attacked, swinging a heavy blade. Rin ducked under the strike and struck quickly at the guard's side where the armor was weakest. The guard stumbled, surprised at the speed. Before the others could react, Rin moved again, never staying still. He turned their strength against them, using their heavy armor and slow strikes to his advantage. The queen's eyes shone with interest. She saw not only a fighter but a mind at work. Each move was chosen with care, each step a piece of a larger plan. This human was not simply surviving, he was calculating. One by one, the guards fell to the sand. Some groaned in pain, others lay still, defeated. Rin's chest rose and fell with heavy breath, but his eyes remained sharp. The arena shook with noise. The laughter that had filled the court before was gone. In its place were voices filled with disbelief, even fear. The announcer raised his hand, his voice louder than before. The human has passed the second test. He now moves closer to the final stage. The queen stood from her throne, her cloak flowing behind her. Her voice cut through the chaos of the arena. Enough for today. The trials will continue tomorrow. Her gaze locked on Rin. For the first time in her long reign, her smile was not one of pride alone. It carried a spark of curiosity and something she could not yet name. Rin bowed his head slightly, then turned and walked from the arena. He did not look back. He did not raise his arms to the crowd. He had taken the first step. And he was not done yet. The city of the alien empire was never quiet, but after the humans' victory, its noise changed. Where once there had been laughter at his boldness, there were now whispers that spread like fire. Markets buzzed with talk of the trials. Soldiers argued in training halls. Nobles gathered in private chambers, debating how such a thing could be possible. A human beat the beast of Krath, some said with disbelief. He struck down the queen's guards, others added. It cannot last, many concluded. The next stage will crush him. Yet none could deny the truth, Rin had passed where others had failed. The queen walked through her palace corridors, her cloak trailing behind her as her advisors hurried at her side. They spoke quickly, their voices sharp with concern. Your Majesty, this cannot continue. If the human wins again, it will dishonor the trials. He is only surviving by luck, another insisted. Next time, he will fall. Allow us to intervene, one suggested. We can change the rules. The queen raised her hand, and all fell silent. Her eyes were calm, but her voice was firm. Do you think I fear a human? No, Majesty, they replied quickly. Then let him fight, she said. If he falls, it will prove what we already believe. If he stands, then perhaps he was meant to reach me. Her advisors bowed, though unease lingered on their faces. The queen herself felt something she had not felt in many years: anticipation. The humans' victories had not angered her. They had awakened her curiosity. That night, Rin sat alone in the barracks. His blade rested across his knees as he sharpened its edge with slow, steady strokes. The other challengers, many of them larger and stronger, kept their distance. None laughed at him anymore. Some watched with suspicion, others with quiet respect. One alien warrior approached him, his face stern. Why do you fight, human? You know the queen cannot be beaten. Rin looked up, his eyes calm. Because she said no human could do it. And because she gave her word. The warrior frowned. You risk death for words spoken in jest. Rin returned to sharpening his blade. A promise is still a promise. Even if she laughed, I will not. The warrior shook his head and walked away, muttering that humans were strange creatures. But his words carried back to the others, and soon whispers spread even among the challengers. The next morning, the trials continued. The arena once again filled with shouting voices, banners waving in the air. The queen sat upon her throne, her gaze fixed on the gates where Rin would enter. This time, his trial was different. Instead of beasts or guards, he was placed in a harsh obstacle field. Walls rose high, traps lay hidden in the sand, and strange machines moved with bladed arms. It was designed to break both body and spirit. Rin moved through it with focus. He climbed, dodged, rolled, and struck with precision. His body bore the marks of struggle: cuts, bruises, dust covering his skin, but his eyes never lost their sharpness. Every trap that closed around him, he escaped. Every machine that attacked, he disabled. By the end, he stood at the center of the arena, bloodied but unbroken. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were shouting in disbelief, in excitement, in fear of what his success might mean. When he lifted his gaze toward the throne, the queen rose to her feet. Their eyes met across the distance of the arena. For the first time, she spoke to him directly. "Human," her voice rang out, "why do you not stop? Why do you keep fighting when you know you cannot win against me?" Rin's answer was simple, carried clear and strong. "Because you said it. And humans keep promises, even those made in jest." The arena grew silent. Even the banners seemed to still in the wind. The queen stared at him, her lips curved into the faintest smile. She could not recall the last time someone had answered her with such calm certainty. Her generals shifted uncomfortably at her side. Some glared at Rin, others whispered in anger. But the queen silenced them with a gesture. The announcer's voice finally rose again, breaking the stillness. "The human has passed the third stage. Only one remains." The crowd erupted once more. Some cheered for the human, others cursed his name, but none could ignore him anymore. That evening, the palace was alive with noise again. Nobles argued about the meaning of his victories. Generals warned the queen of the danger to her honor. But the queen herself sat quietly in her chamber, staring out across the stars. Her hand rested on the hilt of her sword as she whispered to herself, "He will come to face me. And I wish to see how far he will go." Far below, in the quiet of the barracks, Rin finished tending to his wounds. He lay back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. The path ahead was clear. One last step remained. The duel was coming. And neither the queen nor the human would back away. The day of the final duel arrived. The city was louder than ever before. From the highest towers to the lowest streets, every voice spoke of the human who had reached the last stage of the trials. No one had expected it. Some called him a fool who survived by chance, others whispered that fate itself was guiding him. But all agreed on one thing: the human would now face the queen herself. The arena had never been so full. Banners of silver and black waved in the wind, and the crowd stretched as far as the eye could see. Warriors, nobles, merchants, and even children filled the seats, eager to witness what no one had seen before. At the highest point, the queen sat upon her throne, her armor polished until it shone like fire in the sun. Her blade rested at her side, its edge sharp enough to cut through stone. The announcer's voice rang across the arena. "The final stage of the trials begins. The challenger, a human soldier named Rin, will face our queen in single combat." The gates opened, and Rin walked forward. His steps were steady, though his body bore the marks of many battles. His uniform was torn, his arms and face lined with bruises, but his eyes were calm. He carried the same simple blade he had used since the first trial. No shining armor, no great weapon, only his will. The crowd jeered and cheered at once, their voices a storm in the air. Some shouted for his death, others for his victory. But Rin did not look at them. His eyes were fixed on the queen. She rose from her throne and stepped into the arena. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her as she moved, her cloak flowing behind her. She lifted her weapon with ease, as if it weighed nothing, and faced the human who had dared to challenge her. "Human," she said, her voice strong, "you have come far. But here it ends." Rin raised his blade, his voice quiet but firm. "Then let it end with truth." The announcer stepped back, and silence fell. For a moment, the entire arena seemed to hold its breath. Then the queen moved. Her first strike came like lightning, her blade slicing through the air with speed and power. Rin barely turned it aside, the force shaking his arm. He slid back in the sand, his feet digging deep to keep his balance. The crowd gasped at the sound of steel on steel. The queen pressed forward, her strikes fast and merciless. Each swing of her weapon could have ended him if it landed clean. Rin dodged, rolled, and countered where he could, his smaller blade flashing in quick bursts. He could not match her strength. Instead, he relied on timing and precision. The clash rang across the arena, sparks flying each time their blades met. Dust rose around them, the sand torn apart by their movements. The Queen's attacks were like storms wide, sweeping, unstoppable. Rin's counters were like rivers narrow, flowing, adapting. Minutes passed, and still he stood. The crowd, once certain of a quick defeat, grew louder with every heartbeat. Some cheered the Queen's might, others shouted in amazement at the human's endurance. The Queen felt something she had not felt in years. Her blood raced, her heart pounded. No opponent had lasted this long. She struck harder, faster, her blade a blur. Rin staggered under the weight of her strength, his arms burning with pain, but he refused to fall. At last, she drove him back against the arena wall. Her blade pressed down against his, the force so strong it seemed his weapon would break. The crowd roared, certain it was over. But Rin's eyes remained calm. In that moment, he shifted his weight, letting her power carry her blade too far. With sudden precision, he twisted his sword and struck at the hilt of hers. The impact rang sharp, and her weapon flew from her grasp, landing in the sand a few steps away. The entire arena froze. The Queen stood unarmed, her chest rising with heavy breath. Rin held his blade steady, its tip lowered but ready. For the first time in her reign, someone had disarmed her. Silence swept across the crowd. No one spoke, no one moved. All eyes turned to the Queen, waiting for her reaction. She looked at Rin, and instead of anger, a smile touched her lips. It was small at first, then it grew, filled with something rare delight. She lifted her hand and called out, her voice echoing across the arena. The human has stood against me. The human has defeated me. The silence shattered into chaos. Some shouted in disbelief, others cheered wildly. Generals scowled, nobles argued, but none could change what they had seen with their own eyes. Rin lowered his blade and stepped back, his breath heavy, his body trembling with exhaustion. But his eyes still carried the same calm fire. The Queen walked forward, unafraid, her smile lingering. She stopped before him and spoke quietly, so only he could hear. You have taken my words and made them truth. No one else has ever done this. Rin bowed his head slightly. I only did what you asked. Her eyes shone with a light that was neither pride nor mockery, but respect. Perhaps even something deeper. The duel had ended. The impossible had been done. And the galaxy would never forget the day a human stood as an equal to the alien queen. The arena was filled with a storm of voices. Some shouted in disbelief, others screamed in anger, and many cheered louder than ever before. For the first time in living memory, the alien queen had been defeated. Not by a mighty warlord or a legendary beast, but by a single human soldier. The queen stood tall, her blade lying in the sand behind her, while Rin stood before her, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The air was thick with tension. Generals glared down from the royal stands, nobles whispered furiously, and even the common people were divided. This cannot be, one general muttered. He tricked her, another said. No, whispered a voice among the crowd. We saw it. He won. The Queen lifted her hand, and silence rolled over the arena like a wave. Her presence alone was enough to command obedience. Her eyes moved slowly across the crowd, then returned to Rin. In all my years, she said, her voice clear and strong, I have fought kings, beasts, and warriors from across the stars. None have stood against me as you have, human. None have claimed victory. Her words echoed in the stone walls. No one dared to interrupt. She stepped forward and stopped in front of Rin, close enough to see the cuts across his arms and the sweat on his brow. Her eyes held no anger, only a spark of something rare. You have beaten me, she continued. And I do not take back my words. Gasps spread through the crowd. Many remembered her promise spoken in jest, if a human ever beats me, I will marry him. Until this moment, it had been nothing but laughter. Now it was real. The nobles erupted in protest. Majesty, this is madness. He is beneath you. It was only a careless vow. The queen's gaze turned sharp, silencing them instantly. Do you question my honor? Do you believe the ruler of this empire speaks without meaning? The generals bowed their heads, but unease filled their eyes. None could argue further. She looked once more at Rin. You took my words seriously. And you proved them true. You are no longer just a challenger. You are my victor. Rin lowered his blade and bowed his head slightly. His voice was quiet, yet it carried through the stillness. I only held you to your word. The queen's lips curved into the faintest smile, though her eyes remained firm. Then so it shall be. The trials are ended. The human stands as the champion. The crowd erupted again, this time louder than before. Some cheered wildly, proud to witness history. Others shouted in outrage, unable to accept a human as victor. Yet no one could deny what they had seen. Rin left the arena under heavy guard, not because he was a prisoner, but because the empire itself was in shock. Many stared as he passed. Some spat at the ground, but others nodded with respect. His calm face never changed. He walked as though nothing had been won, nothing had been lost, only a promise fulfilled. That evening, the palace was restless. Nobles gathered in secret halls, whispering about rebellion, about dishonor, about how their queen could not bind herself to a human. Soldiers muttered in the barracks, divided between anger and admiration. The empire was shaken to its core. Inside her chamber, the queen removed her crown and placed her blade upon the stand. For a long time, she sat in silence, staring out across the stars. She thought of every battle she had fought, every enemy she had crushed. None of them had stirred her heart as this duel had. The door opened, and Rin was brought before her. He bowed respectfully, his plain uniform still torn from the fight. You do not look like a man who has won, the queen said. Rin met her gaze calmly. It was not about winning. It was about truth. You gave your word, and I gave mine. Her eyes studied him. He did not boast, did not demand, did not even look proud. He was steady, as though the battle had simply been another duty. For the first time, the queen felt a strange warmth. Respect had always been given to her out of fear. But this human gave it freely, without trembling. You are unlike any warrior I have met, she said softly. And you, Rin replied, are unlike any leader I have faced. The silence between them carried more weight than the loudest cheers of the arena. At last, the queen stood and placed her crown upon the table. Her voice was firm, yet not cold. Then let it be known. Tomorrow, before the empire, I will declare the human as my chosen victor. Let the stars witness that I keep my word. Rin bowed again. I will stand where you ask me to stand. When he left the chamber, the queen lingered by the window, watching the sky. For the first time, she did not feel invincible. But she did not feel weak either. She felt alive. The empire was unsettled, but her decision was made. The human had beaten her. And she would honor him. The next day arrived with the weight of 1,000 storms. From every corner of the empire, citizens gathered in the grand plaza before the royal palace. Massive banners hung from tall spires, and the air buzzed with tension. Everyone knew what had happened in the arena. Everyone knew the queen had been beaten. The nobles stood in rows, their faces stiff with disapproval. Generals lined the steps, their armor polished and their eyes sharp with suspicion. The people filled the square, voices rising in waves of questions, arguments, and disbelief. And at the center of it all, the queen appeared. She walked down the palace steps in her full ceremonial armor, her crown gleaming in the light of the twin suns. The crowd fell silent. Even her harshest critics could not ignore the power she carried in her presence. She raised her hand, and the silence deepened until only the sound of banners snapping in the wind could be heard. "My people," the queen began, her voice carrying across the plaza, "yesterday you witnessed something no one believed possible. A human stood before me in the arena, and he fought with courage, skill, and spirit. He did not trick me, he did not hide, and he did not surrender. He defeated me in fair combat." The words sent ripples through the crowd. Some shouted in anger, but others were silent in awe. The queen's eyes swept across them, unflinching. "You also remember my words," she continued. "I once said that if a human ever beat me, I would marry him." Many laughed at that promise. Yet a queen's word is not empty. A ruler's vow is not broken. "I do not take back what I said." The plaza erupted with noise. Some cried out in shock, others cheered wildly. The nobles shouted protests, their voices rising in desperation. "This is unthinkable. He is an outsider. You cannot bind yourself to one of them." The queen turned her gaze toward them, sharp as a blade. "Would you rather I lie to my people? Would you rather your queen break her word?" The nobles fell silent, unwilling to be seen as challengers to her honor. Then the queen motioned toward the side of the platform. From the shadows stepped Rin, dressed not in armor, but in simple robes of white. His wounds from the duel were still fresh, but he walked with steady steps, calm and unshaken. The people murmured at the sight of him. Some spat his name with bitterness, but others whispered it with respect. He stopped beside the queen and bowed slightly, acknowledging the vast crowd before him. The queen's voice rang out once more. "This man has done what no other has done. He has stood against me and prevailed. He has held me to my own word, and for that, he has earned not only my respect, but my promise." She placed her hand on Rin's shoulder. "From this day forward, he will stand beside me. Not as a servant, not as a captive, but as one who has proven himself worthy in the eyes of the Empire." The crowd roared, some in outrage, others in celebration. The sound rolled like thunder across the city. Rin spoke then, his voice calm but clear. "I did not fight to take a throne. I did not fight to claim power. I fought because honor demands truth. Your queen gave her word, and I gave mine. Now I will stand by her side, not as a conqueror, but as one who believes in her strength." The simple words struck deeper than any speech. Many in the crowd fell silent, realizing that the human spoke not with pride, but with sincerity. The queen lifted her hand once more. "Let it be known to all worlds that the Empire does not stand on arrogance, but on truth. Let the stars bear witness that I keep my word. And let our enemies see that even among humans, there are warriors who cannot be broken." The declaration echoed across the plaza, across the Empire, and soon across the stars. The image of the queen and the human standing side by side spread through every world under her rule. Some mocked it, some feared it, and some admired it. But none could deny it. That night, the palace was quiet. The storm of voices outside slowly faded, though the Empire itself was forever changed. In her private chamber, the queen sat with her crown beside her, looking out over the city lights. Rin entered and stood near the balcony. He did not speak at first, only looked at the stars that stretched endless across the sky. After a long silence, he finally said, "You know this will not be easy." The queen's lips curved into a small smile. "Nothing worth keeping ever is." For a moment, the two stood together in silence, their shadows crossing as the starlight poured in. Neither victory nor defeat hung between them now. Only the promise of what lay ahead. The Empire would test them, enemies would rise, and doubts would linger. But in that moment, a bond stronger than any battle had been forged. The queen had given her word. The human had taken it seriously. And together, they would face whatever the stars held next.